There will be an extra class called Classy, which I will be a student of.
島には複数のスポットが存在する。スポットは一度占有するごとに1ボーナスポイントを得ることができる。ただし、ボーナスポイントは試験中の使用はできない。試験終了時にクラスポイントとして加算される。
Our teachers and instructors tell us that each class will be participating in an exam taking place on an island. We will be staying on the island for 1 week, and whoever has the most points at the end will win. Each class starts out with 300 points. These points can be used to buy items from a list of things. A book is given to us of all the things we can buy with these points. We are also already given a lot of supplies as is for our stay on the island. We are told that there are several locations which a class can acquire, and by holding on to one of these locations for the whole week we can gain 20 points for each location we acquire. Additionally, in order to acquire these locations, each class has to pick a leader which has to accept the location. By the end of the week, each class can try and guess who the other class's leaders are. If they guess right, they get an extra 50 points for each class leader guessed correctly. However, if even one leader is guessed incorrectly, no points will be added to any other leader guessed correctly, as well as the points from acquiring a spot will be taken away. Not only this, but the class will lose an additional 50 points for guessing incorrectly. We start at the outer side of the island on the beach with all our supplies. I would suggest that we split our group up, 5 groups of 3 people each. Each class has around 25 people in it, so 15 people will explore the island in groups of 3. The remaining 10 people will stay at the beach guarding our supplies. The 5 groups of 3 people will explore the island and search for spots we can claim. Splitting up like this will allow us to search for spots faster, as well as get to more than one spot at a time. I would suggest that we only want to claim 3 spots for now, and to make sure that the spots are close to a water source and are of high elevation as well. They should have protection from the elements, so a cave or tree covering would be ideal. 3 of the groups from the 15 people will find us a spot to claim. Once they do, they have one member from a group come back to the beach so they can get the rest of the group back to the spot. As well, if another class comes to a spot we are at already, once that class leaves after seeing us there, the extra person can follow the class to see where they're set up, then return to the spot they found afterwards. The other 2 groups from the 15 people will watch over where the rest of the other classes are residing. Similarly, having one person from each group come back to the beach after finding another class's camping spot. After a while, a person from each of the groups come back to the beach. Once one person from each group is back, we can continue on. The spots we would most likely get based on the description I gave would most likely be these 3 spots. After arriving to the first spot, I would pick a leader randomly to confirm the spot. I would have 5 people stay at the first spot, then bring the rest of the group to the next spot. 5 people will stay at the second location, and the last spot will have the rest stay there, having the leader confirm each spot. I would then ask the people who came from the last 2 groups of 3 people that were to spy on other classes to see where the other classes are set up. We would see where some of the classes are set up, meaning that the people spying on those classes would have a chance to see who the leader of each group is. We would be able to see where each class picked, and possibly each class leader. The people secretly watching over the other classes would see who confirmed their locations, as well as all the supplies the other classes have. One of the people spying on the other classes would tell us that they saw Katsurugi with the leader card, as well as Tatsuka in the same location with him. This would suggest that Katsurugi is the leader of Class A. However, the circumstances described to which it was revealed that he was the leader is strange. Almost as if Katsurugi wanted someone watching him to see him with the leader card. There's only 2 people there, and conversation between the 2 students seems fake. This would suggest that Katsurugi isn't the leader, but it's actually Tatsuka. The students spying on the other classes might also witness Class B and D picking their leader. After setting up our camp, I would want 2 people on the beach to watch if or when anyone from any of the other classes decides to drop out of the exam. There might be different spots for each class to decide to drop out, so I would explore the beach for these spots and have multiple students watching over them if so. But if there's only one set for classes to resign, we can focus on that one location to witness students dropping out. One student dropping out of the exam makes a class lose 30 points. Now we can come up with a strategy to beat the other classes.
龍園に会った時、あいつのそばには無線機が置かれていた。 伊吹も同じ無線機を持っていた。龍炎自身が伊吹と連絡を取り合っていたなら。
The idea of this game is to have the most points by the end of the week. So our strategy should revolve around us gaining points while at the same time making the other classes lose points. Ways to make other classes lose points is if they have to spend points on things or if they guess incorrectly on another class's leader. If a class has to spend points, the leader might have to be the one to confirm the purchase and we might have a chance to see the leaders of another class. We could steal other classes' food sources to make them use points on food as well as sabotaging the water sources for the other students, making them spend points or have people drop out in the cases where they get sick. We also know that each class is given a certain amount of supplies. I would want to keep track of any supplies that the other classes have that we don't have. Supplies other classes have that we don't have means that class spent points to get those things. So we can keep track of how many points each class has by keeping track of the things they have that a class doesn't have. I would go around to each class to see where they're set up and the things they have. We would see that Class A has a lot of supplies and be able to add up the amount of points they would have had to use to get all the supplies. Similarly with Class C, we would see that they seemingly spent all their points just to have a normal time on the island. However, when we add up all the things Class C would have spent points on, we would find out that they couldn't have spent all their points. Additionally, all the points that Class C should still have is strangely the same amount that Class A should have spent on their supplies. This would seem to suggest that Class C spent their points on Class A's supplies. It's also possible that one of our students from Class C spying on the other classes overheard Riley and Katsurugi making a contract with each other, letting the rest of the group know. The fact that Class C spent all their points suggests that they intend to win based on the bonus points. The 0-point strategy isn't a very good plan. It relies completely on the bonus points, and if even one person guesses their leader, then all those points are gone. Class B and Class D seem to also have a mutual respect with each other. I would also attempt to make an alliance with Class B and D. I would offer that I help figure out the class leaders of A and C so they lose more points, but I would only tell Class B and D the leaders of Class A and C at the very end of the week, and only tell the class of B and C that I know the leader of. This way they won't get the bonus points, but the other class whose leader was guessed will still lose an additional 50 points. From the people on our class that are spying on other classes, we would also learn that there's a member from Class C among the Class D students and a member from Class A among the Class B students. Supposedly they were cast out by their own classes, but thinking objectively, this would also be a chance for those classes to attempt to figure out the other classes' leaders.
まったく努力は嫌い。君はよくそう嘘吹くが、汚れた服、傷を負った体、すべて勝利への執念と努力を物語っている。
When exploring the island once again, we would come across a Class C spot. Class C spent all their points and have now abandoned their location. I would want to check the panel to make absolutely sure, because if they did leave, that would mean that this location is another spot to acquire, giving us more points. But if not, that would suggest that there are still people from Class C still on the island, specifically the leader of Class C. Our class had people spying over the beach and would witness when Class C decided to go back onto the ship. However, they would also notice that Riley didn't end up going on the ship and instead decided to stay on the island. If this is true, then that would suggest that Riley is the class leader of Class C. We now know the leaders of Class A and Class C.
堀北、どうした？
彼女は熱を出して意識を失っています。すぐ休ませてあげてください。
彼女はリタイアでいいんだな。
はい。
At the end of day 6, the spies that are watching over the other classes' spots would see what went down at the Class D campsite, witnessing the fire that was started, and that Hirikata is the leader of Class D. The spies from our class on the beach would see that Inakaji took Hirikata's limo body to the beach and made her leave the island exam. This would mean Class D would lose an additional 30 points, but this would also mean that Class D would need a new leader. Seeing that Inakaji was the one to bring Hirikata to the beach, he would most likely be the new leader of Class D.
それではこれより試験の結果を発表する。最下位は C クラス0ポイント。
何？
In the morning before the other classes wake up, I would get our class's leader and bring them to the beach. On the way I would tell the leader to fake a limp, acting as if they had injured their leg, also telling them to lean on me to further the idea that their leg is injured. I tell them that they're going to drop out of the exam similar to Hirikata. This way, in the off chance any other class learned our leader, we could switch the leader on the last day, making it nearly impossible to figure out our class leader. Once at the beach, the original Class E leader drops out because of a leg injury that needs to be tended to, meaning Class E now needs a new leader. I would decide randomly which of our class members should be the leader, as I wouldn't want to make it myself. The time comes to finish the island exam. All the classes get a chance to guess the leaders. I would tell Class D that the leader of Class A is Tatsuka, and the leader of Class C is Rylene, making those classes lose an additional 50 points. However, for Class E, I would write down the leaders for Class A and C, as well as the leader for Class D being Inakaji. When it comes to points, Class E would get 60 from the first 3 locations we got, as well as 150 points for guess the leaders of the other class correctly, meaning all our bonus points would be enough to beat all the other classes. Class C would have 0 points, making them last place. Class D would be in 4th place with 55 points. The 100 points they had from guessing other classes' leaders would be gone since we guessed their leader correctly, as well an additional 50 points would be subtracted from our class guessing the leader of Class D correctly, on top of losing another 20 points from owning a location on the island. Class A would still be 3rd, but they would lose an additional 50 points this time, having an extra class guess our leader, making them have 70 points. Class B would still be in 2nd, as not much would be different from the outcome in the show unless our class managed to witness who their class leader was, meaning Class B would have anywhere between 90 to 140 points. As for Class C, our class, including the max amount of spending points we would use, being around 50 to 60 points at the most, and making our leader resign on the last day, losing another 30 points. Class C should have 420 points at the least and 530 points at the most in the case where our class was able to steal supplies and food from the other classes, making us not need to spend any points. This would mean our class came in 1st overall, making us the winners. But what do you think? Is this a good way to beat the island exam, or do you think there's a better way to do it? Let me know in the comments.